Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us bright and early. And welcome to this final day of Big Data from Space 2025. My name is Stephanie Lumnitz. I am working for the European Space Agency, currently seconded to DG RTD of the European Commission. And it's my pleasure to moderate this panel, From Raw Data to Real Decisions, Systems that Work in the Space Data Age. So over the past week, we have explored tokens and embeddings, digital twins, data cubes, AI agent, edge to cloud processing, and many other technologies that help us to evolve working with big data from space across different disciplines and applications. And we have heard both progress that has been made, but also challenges that we're still facing. So this discussion is not a recap, but a synthesis and looking forward. So we want to ask the question, how do we take the lessons of this week and turn them into systems that really work? So systems that are scalable, that are resilient, that are interconnected, and first and foremost, that are crucially relevant for society. So to help us navigate this conversation today, and also as already mentioned in our panel 1 by Lynn Dudenhofer, we are joined today by 5 outstanding panelists across multiple disciplines, which each bring a unique perspective. We have Dr. Franz Imler, who is the head of the Environmental Observation Sector at the European Commission RTD, shaping EU priorities for environmental observations. We are joined by Fani Kalyano de Jong, who is the Space Economy Lead of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, with over 20 years of experience in finance and investments, amongst others in climate and the green economy. We are joined by Dr. Dimitra Stefudi, who is an assistant professor of space law at Leiden University and an expert in legal and regulatory aspects of space data and infrastructure. We are joined by Maximilian Schwinger, who is the head of the International Ground Segment Department at the German Remote Sensing Data Center of DLR, leading on modernizing operational models and also advancing HPC data infrastructures. And we're joined by Janis Krakops, who is the head of the Data Governance Unit at Latvia's Ministry of Smart Administration and Regional Development of Latvia, and who is providing the national policy perspective and also policy implementation perspective on trusted and interoperable data ecosystems. So thank you very much. I also know for you being with us so early this morning. And to get things started, I'd like to know from each of you, from your perspective, in about 3 minutes, what things are relevant from this week in terms of big data from space. And we'll start maybe with Franz. So looking at the discussions this week from your European Union perspective, what are the top priorities for investments in research and operations for big data from space? And sorry, also a round of applause this morning for everyone being here, for yourselves and for the panelists.
Thank you, Stephanie, and good morning, everyone. A round of applause for you for being here already that early in the morning. So, yes, the EU policy environment, I think I can say it's really very favorable for what you are doing here, what your community is doing. So all the keywords or buzzwords that shape this conference, artificial intelligence, big data, space, Earth observation, all of this is very high on the agenda of the European Commission. If you listen to the speeches, maybe you do, from Ursula von der Leyen, the State of the European Union, You will have heard that she puts research and innovation at the center of the European economy. So also this part is really well addressed and better, much better than it used to be in the past. So we have a very favorable environment, and also there will be plenty of budget if the proposal of the Commission will be accepted for research and innovation in this area. I don't know if some of you have followed this. So for the new multi-financial framework, that's planned, or it's proposed to double the budget for Horizon Europe. And there are two main building blocks in this. It's quite a complicated program, as you may know, but one is on digital and one is on space. So there will be sufficient and plenty of funding available starting from 28. So there's still ways to go, and there's still discussions that will happen in between. So it remains to be seen what happens. And in this kind of gap in between, we don't do nothing. So there's still programs on the way. We had a topic this year, the deadline was a week ago, that is very much related to what you do here. It was called Earth Intelligence for the Green Transition. I don't know if anybody here in the room applied for it. No? Yeah, no. Pity, because I think what you do here is very relevant for this. And indeed, it's a bit different community that usually we work with, or that I know well. In fact, I don't know many people of you here. It's my first bits. But I think you are really the people that we need to bring data into, to make use, distill really insights out of data and shape them in a way that users can really use it. Maybe we come to this question also later. And that's maybe another important aspect that is very relevant from our side, is really the application, the users. We have, for example, a mission on climate change adaptation, which really works with local authorities and cities and addresses the risks that come from climate change and disasters, flooding, we know them, heat waves, etc. And how to work with these people is very important, and to bridge this gap. I think there's a lot of potential in artificial intelligence to really bridge it, but you have to also really work with these people, and that's also very important from our side, and that's certainly something to still work on. Maybe I stop here.
Okay, thank you very much. So maybe staying with this bridge to real users, Fanny, from your experience, what factors drive the uptake of space solutions, or in general solutions globally, and how do we make sure they scale and matter to society?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for having me here today with you. This is also my first BiDS'. And just look around, I do think in this BiDS' I was probably the only one from a financial institution, an international financial institution. If I'm wrong, please raise your hand. But what I realize is that when we talk about space data and Earth observation for a bank or an institution like the EBRD, actually, who has heard of EBRD before? Raise your hands. We spoke yesterday, Leslie. I explained everything about it. Okay, EBRD stands for European Bank for Construction Development, as Stephanie said. But we are very much like the EIB, the World Bank. So we are, international financial institution, and we're mission-driven. So what we do needs to, obviously look at the green transition, look at many aspects that we need to measure, and we cannot manage what we cannot measure. And that's where I think Earth observation and space data can come in. And Stephanie introduced me as the space economy lead, but until 2 months ago, I was in the climate change team of the bank for 17 years. And I realized the importance, as you said, why is it important? Because I realized even for our projects, before a bank actually invests in something, we need to do some risk assessment, or we need to monitor, ESGs and etc. Monitor the project's, benefits. And at the end, we need to assess whether a project and investment has gone well or not. And in all that, I think the Earth observation and space data opportunities is massive, it's huge. But unfortunately, what I've seen from within my institution, but of course, I think that can be replicated in many others in that financial industry, is that maybe it hasn't, the penny hasn't fully dropped. I mean, it's now becoming more and more obvious that it's important, but we need each other. And obviously, I speak a different language than you, and you speak a different language than me, but I want to understand. I want to understand how I can translate this huge amount of potential and actual data you have, and how we can implement it and make it scalable to our projects. I don't know if I can mention, but quickly, we have 3 pilots with the European Space Agency that, it starts to demonstrate in different parts of the bank how Earth observation can support us, also internally for our own functions. And these 3 pilots under the, I think it's called GDA, the Global Development Assistance, is basically helping us using real projects, real investments that we are currently investing in, and using the geospatial data and show us how things are progressing. And I think that's, that's key for us to start, hopefully, making more systematically, integrated into how we operate. And one last thing, not to use all the time, I know that our clients in the region where we operate, which is quite a weird region, not weird in the sense of, the geography, but we all know in what kind of geopolitics issues and world we're living in. So EBRD mainly supports or invests in the private sector industries in the former USSR. We stopped in 2 countries since 2014, you can guess which ones. And then we expanded to Turkey and Mongolia, Northern Africa, and now we're going Sub-Saharan Africa. So a lot of the information we will need is also on connectivity or how to support remote areas on this point. So again, space domain comes in not only as, Earth observation, but as a topic. Why space is relevant, strategically for us as an institution, but for the world, and how it actually helps society on many issues. So yes, I mentioned climate, but connectivity is another one. So I'm very keen to hopefully find opportunities together for those who woke up early. Thank you. But yeah, happy to discuss later in private. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Fanny. So Yannis, from going from the global to the national perspective and going into the data ecosystem overall, what are Latvia's priorities in building data governance, data policy that ensures trust and value across different sectors, as Fanny already pointed out also?
Yes, so thank you for the question, also thank you for the panel, and big round of virtual applause for everybody who showed up today very early. But yeah, to answer your question, I think that for us, when we talk about developing new solutions, we have to talk about, let's say, different topics. So one of the practical topics that has been on the table for our ministry, also the Ministry of Smart Administration and Regional Development, is the, let's say, the efficient dissemination of data. So of course, as a government, we have a lot of data, but we also have to ensure that this data is, let's say, being disseminated in a, let's say, efficient manner, so that there aren't significant challenges related to interoperability. And we are currently, let's say, implementing our national data exchange and governance platform, so the data exchange and the dissemination dimension, so that's definitely one of the priorities. Interoperability, I think, has been, let's say, a question that's been on the, I think, on everybody's mind for the past, I think, 10 years, ever since we were starting to develop new services systems. I think that at one point everybody just woke up and said, wow, they don't recognize each other and they can't speak to each other. So of course we have to tackle interoperability, and as it relates to spatial data and solutions related to spatial data, I think that of course one of the things that we are aiming to, let's say, facilitate as a policy makers for data governance is that we want to ensure that, let's say, the data that's available from the government, from the base registers, from the trusted sources, so that it is, let's say, quality, so that it has the necessary metadata, it has the necessary structure. And basically, we aim to, let's say, get the data quality up so that it can help, so that it is a good, let's say, baseline for all sorts of digital twin solutions. And when we talk about digital twins and spatial data, I think at the national level, one of the key, not issues, but things that we need is that we need institutions, companies, actors who are very much interested in leading this field, providing these, let's say, good examples that everybody can then follow and maybe jump in on the idea and develop new projects.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing this perspective, and also, as I understood, for introducing this national data platform that has in its goal to really pull together all national data resources. Is that right?
Yes, so the idea is that we want to make, let's say, government data dissemination centralized. So basically, the idea of the Dagr platform is that we make, let's say, we integrate all of the registers, trusted sources within the platform, and the register holders or the data owners, they still have full control over their data, but they don't have to, let's say, think about infrastructure as it is covered on a centralized manner. So basically, from this perspective, we want to make a one-stop shop for government data so that it's available in a central manner, so that actors from different fields can then come in, and there isn't, let's say, that much legal challenge also related to, let's say, the paperwork that's connected to data exchange and all that stuff, but also, of course, from technical and interoperability perspectives.
Okay, thank you very much. So maybe staying with this thought a little bit also on the legal challenges. Dimitra, from a legal and regulatory perspective, what are some of the most prominent challenges concerning the way we access and disseminate space data?
Let me first address the elephant in the room. I don't blame you if you don't understand where the law and the regulation fits in all that. But I wanted to borrow a quote, a very good observation from one of yesterday's keynotes, that the problem is not whether we have enough data, but how do we access them, where do we store them, how do we have them ready to use. For all those stages, there are some either restrictions or limitations, prohibitions that come from the law. You may not be able, for example, to process data a certain way. You may not be able to disseminate data to certain users. Those are things that are coming from the law. This is why we discuss legal aspects. They do affect the way we use and disseminate data. To give a few more concrete examples, if you think about intellectual property and sometimes the copyrights you have on Earth observation images that have to remain, or if you think about potential limitations in creating value-added products, derivative products, and bringing them to an end user, those are examples of how the law interacts with all that. When it comes to challenges, the main one is having this awareness that there is a legal aspect in this entire discussion. You take this into account. A second challenge when we're talking about big data in particular is that the users can be anywhere, the uses can be anything. This is exactly why we have space data and big data. So understanding the applicable legal framework and consequently applying it is a challenge. A little more practically speaking, there is, if I could pick maybe from applications we have heard about the past couple of days and from things that are happening at the moment. Something I did not hear very much about, and I'm glad because it dominates other space discussions and it's saturated there, is the matter of cybersecurity. It is a challenge because if you don't have data available, if you don't have the confidentiality, the integrity you need, you simply are not able to develop the applications you have in mind. You may not have reliable applications, and that comes with consequences. But there's also a very interesting initiative on behalf of the European Union. There is a draft EU Space Act, which may take a couple of years to be negotiated and finally adopted, but it creates an internal market for space, and that includes space-based data. And conditions, of course, to access this market are significant. As it's called in the regulation, the primary space data operator, so all the commercial data suppliers, would have to comply with certain requirements in order to be able to serve any EU customer, meaning all of us around here. So those are some of the main points of the regulation to keep in mind. A lot of it is not very common in open data, like Copernicus data and so on. Side note, they do not come without limitations. The limitations are much more flexible because the purpose is to stimulate their use, but primarily with commercial data suppliers. But commercial data are becoming much more prominent. We rely much more on them, so it's interesting to understand any implications that come with them. And maybe I would like to close with an observation, I don't know, a disclaimer on my behalf. I started explaining that the law brings limitations, but this doesn't mean that you stop what you're doing or you change your plans or anything. You just take into account that there may be a legal or a regulatory implication, and you adjust your product accordingly, because at the end of the day, this will enable you to develop it further, to find more uses, to find more users. I will leave it at that, and maybe we'll pick it up again in questions later on.
Thank you very much, Dimitra. And maybe staying with this point you raised on cybersecurity, Maximilian, as infrastructures do become more interconnected and also cloud native, how should we think about cybersecurity and also operational resilience in these Earth observation and space systems?
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. It's an old issue, I would say. I mean, the systems become more interconnected, and we have the same problems, but in a different scale with cybersecurity. So we get many chances, as we heard. Also from the legal side, there come much more obligations with us, with interconnected systems. And I remember several years ago, there was an advertisement for a antivirus program with an umbrella, and this does not work anymore. We can't see security or cyber security like a raincoat we can put on. We have to, the first buzzword here, then we have to do security by design. It has to be part of the architecture, as also the awareness for the legal obligation has to be part of the architecture. We can't avoid that. And this is a truth which is not reflected in the way it has to be reflected right now, I think. It will come in the upcoming years even more. And one other aspect which comes especially with interconnected systems I want to highlight is the next buzzword, zero trust. So in these highly interconnected environments, you don't know whom you are connected to for real. You see the data coming in, and what is in the one second a trusted partner can be in the other second some man in the middle connecting to your system. So what was years ago nice monitoring the overall system behavior now comes to be a means of recognizing this kind of attacks. So many new topics to address security at a new scale.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for all of you to sharing your perspective. So at this point, I would like to also invite the audience. If there is questions or comments, you're more than welcome to raise your hand and pose them to the panel overall or each of the panelists. So maybe just, is there already a question or a comment somebody would like to address? Okay, if not yet, feel free to jump in any time. we'll start maybe we can keep the light bright so we see if there is a reaction. Thank you. So then maybe moving on with the discussion amongst us is to Fanny. So what do you see as the biggest bottlenecks in turning space data into real-time decision-ready insights and how to overcome them? So thinking about all the perspectives that have been shared so far, is there something for you that comes to mind?
I was hoping not to be the first one to answer, so I can use all the amazing points the panelists will put forward. But I can quickly say, how do we fix this? I don't have the answer for this. Hopefully, you will have the answer for this. What I know from financial institution side is that we have money, okay? So we can do the puzzle together, and we hopefully can tap into that new budget, the MFF that Franz referred to, when it's approved, because this is where we need to start showing the added value of what space data and space solutions can do, as I said, for institutions, but for society as a whole. I think even if you take, the UN SDGs, right? Out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, 13 can be measured by space data. That says a lot already about the fact that we need those insights. But I think someone raised it, obviously the legal aspect of cybersecurity, everything was mentioned, but I realized that, again, it's a matter of translation. And for, fellow bankers that I cooperate with a lot during my day-to-day job, how do I translate this into, digestible solutions, solving their problems or solving their clients' problems is where we need to close the gap. So I don't know how to fix it, but I know that this is the bottleneck. The storytelling. I spoke with someone. I will not, make free publicity, but I took their flyer, and I wanted to read that because I thought it was interesting. In the flyer, they say, if you recognize yourselves, don't start clapping and trying to make noise. But it says, imagine what that insight could do to lower your cost, improve your performance, and drive new value. If I bring that to the bankers, they will understand, okay, it will lower my cost, it will improve my performance, and it will add value. These are the kind of, again, as I said, the language that the non-techie people would understand. If you start talking about, all the things you talk about that sounded Chinese to me, to be honest. I don't know if Dimitra relates, but when they start talking about, what software they use for this, I'm lost. But when you say you have an investment in that dam, in Uzbekistan, which we do, I can monitor what has happened to that, dam and how you should invest in that infrastructure. That I can bring back. I can say that with that kind of data, we can add value and we can make sure that we put the money in the right place and we do a good job. So I would say, again, it's a matter of translation, because I think also Dimitra mentioned, there's a lot of data. It's a gold mine. The thing is, how do we use it? Do you want it to stay on the shelf or on your cloud or on your computers? No, we want it to be used. Hopefully you want it to be partnered with people that can bring it further and, in a way, solve certain problems or, add value to certain areas. So I really think it's a collective effort here. And we may all work in silos, but the truth is the bubble now is, has opened. The word space, space economy or the added value of space domain is becoming increasingly known and mentioned. So I think it's time to talk to each other and make sure we find solutions, and hopefully the rest of the panel will provide some real solutions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think Franz wanted to react.
If I may add something, you mentioned it's quite a way to reach the user, and I think quite often it's a bit underestimated. You have this beautiful new satellite or your data space or your foundational model system and think, wow, isn't that great? But the way to reach an end user, a city mayor, a farmer, a business, a hydro station manager, it's a long way, and it's often underestimated to really go that mile to reach them. So this term decision-ready insights, what does it actually mean, decision-ready? I think there's two important aspects. One is the decision, the insight must be robust, must be trustworthy. You don't want to base decision on a system that is hallucinating, to put it strongly. And second thing is you need to understand the decision-making process. So you need to really speak the language of that decision maker and know what he's actually confronted with. So you need to involve these people from the beginning actually to understand what their needs are and to speak their language and to know the decision making. So this is two important aspects. And then another aspect I like to mention is what we typically struggling with, because we fund nice projects, they develop nice tools and knowledge and so on. The problem often is when the project finishes, the tool is no longer maintained. So we also need to be able to commercialize these products, to make it viable on the market. That needs also funding and needs maybe also funding from private sector. So we need to really involve the private sector. I think that's from both sides, from the funding, but also young startups, scale-ups, where there's also funding from the Horizon, by the way. But we need, at the end, we want these companies to be able to operate on a long term, and that's also a big challenge.
Thank you. There's a reaction from the audience.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. I wanted to bring in, because it's nice how you focus on the different sectors and different ways of uptake. I'm from the university, and what can academia or education do? Because we are also somewhere in there, right? One way we have to skill up also to make use of that data, but we have to educate the new generation that needs to be easy enough in the different domains, computer science, environmental science, and so on. What do you think, where can we focus on or support that uptake?
Good question, and a very important one. And indeed, we need the young people, we need skill, we need people to be able to develop such systems, but we also need entrepreneurs. We need people who are assertive enough to go out there and say, look, I have developed this and now I make a business out of it, or I sell it. So that's also a part of the education. I think in Europe, people tend to stay in the academic sector a lot, or try to stay, which is wonderful to work in. But we also need to educate them maybe better and to be more daring to start their own business and their own venture.
If I can add up to that a little bit, you could also do something that not many actors want to do. Bring the user requirements to the user. Academia, science, technology creates amazing applications. Those applications solve very important problems for someone who may not know about it. And there is a gap between the application and the user. That gap could be a direct one. You could go to the user. You could involve a national authority, a European authority. I wanted to link it a little bit to that aspect and say that one way to instigate even more use of data is to put them down in policies and laws. It sounds self-explanatory, but there is a ton of EU documents that refer to data and do not refer specifically to Copernicus data, so that already puts a limitation to the user to do that. So depending also on your region, your area of work, your jurisdiction, you could create as part of your product, your thinking, that aspect as well, how you can translate what you made to the actual user. To do that, you do not only need to understand the requirements, but you need to speak that language. And one aspect of interoperability we have not addressed yet is that, I don't know how you would call it, it's not operational, it's the user producer of application.
So maybe to translate this into education and the university, maybe we do need more cross-disciplinary, let's say, short courses or workshops where we do bring in the law faculty, for example, or other types of disciplines here. Yeah. Okay. More reactions or questions from the audience? In the front.
Thank you for this opportunity. I have a question on the upscaling, which is clearly a problem, I think, in Europe. And I would like to hear from you from the different perspective. There's, I think, the investment perspective. So I would like to hear from that one, but also there's the legislative part. You're saying there will be a new Space Act, but there's also the risk, aren't we over-regulating things? So what is really the problem? Probably it's a combination. Is it technical? Is it a financial issue? Or is it over-regulation? Why can't we keep up with upscaling from good ideas to profitable solutions? And yeah, do you, from the financial perspective, do you see differences in the different countries as you are involved in several of them? And I'm ready to take the blame also on the regulation aspect, as I'm also from the Commission. So.
Okay, I don't think the Commission can answer a question from the Commission. On the investment, as I said, I think we know, and increasingly we know, that there is a lot of Earth observation and geospatial data that can support us as an institution for our different functions to, as I said, make better informed decisions for investments. But the limitation, I guess, internally, first of all, we have a lack of capacity and skills. So essentially, in the whole EBRD, we're like 5,000 people. Maybe 2 or 3 know how to play with the, with the Earth observation data. So we do need the expertise from outside. Me personally, I needed to go back to university, so to speak, a couple of years ago to start understanding what it means, space economy. So I'm a strong believer in, lifelong learning, so never stop learning something new. And this domain is evolving very rapidly. So you need to stay, ahead of the game. You need to know what's happening. And the bankers, as I said, don't understand what's there. They don't know what exists out there. So again, the marketing, in a way, the storytelling needs to be made clearer. Perhaps, I think, in a part of the world where we invest, maybe in Central Asia, I've heard that the quality or the data information there is not really available. I mean, there's a lot happening on the other part of the world, and so that's something I've heard from others, that they may want better quality or granular information. For example, we work on a flagship program. We call it the Green Cities program in EBRD. And that's where we partner actually with the European Space Agency to start demonstrating the added value. Is a lot of the municipalities, they don't have the data to provide to see how things are evolving. So again, I can see many areas where we could support each other. But as I said, it's a collective effort. Not one of us will be able to solve this. I will let others respond.
Yes, so maybe I can jump in also on this question. I think at the moment we have a lot of regulations at the EU level, at the national level, that basically provide us with a framework for innovation. But I think let's say one of the key drivers, I think 100% I agree what you mentioned, is skills. So whenever we have, let's say, new technologies, new regulations, like the buzzword, I think, of the past at least 10 years, so AI, everybody is talking about AI, so we need to have, let's say, the skills. We need to also, that's also one of the biggest, I think, aspects that the universities and academic sector can really support, let's say, the public sector and also the private sector. But from the perspective of upscaling regulations, I think that I think that some more work could be done just on the, let's say, explaining of the regulation and the implementation, because I see that, at least also from my perspective, that there are a lot of, let's say, new EU regulations, that the Data Governance Act, Data Act, and also the regulation that you mentioned. And basically, it's the work doesn't end when the regulation and the implementing acts are approved. You basically have to, let's say, work with the sector. You have to showcase them, okay, is this a strategic regulation? What opportunities does it provide? And then maybe through this dialogue, I think you can also upscale the solutions, because I think that when you just create a regulation, of course, there are a few outliers that, let's say, lead, but you really have to communicate to the public and to the private sector the possibilities that exist, also with the funding, with the regulations, with the new possibilities, so that we have these, let's say, innovations. And that's something I think that all of us that are in the panel and also probably in the audience that have to do.
Yeah, may I add also one aspect? When I hear upscaling and investment, I always think of infrastructure, and I wonder if we really need more investment in infrastructure, or the tendency of federation can solve this issue and lower the redundancy, also an issue right now. And this is something to be weighed against each other, sovereignty by institution, nations, Europe. What is enough? Where do we want to pay for that? And where can we go the direction of finding a solution together, federating platforms, different solutions still, because that's also part of redundancy, different solutions, but with similar functionalities working together and forming a federated, upscaled infrastructure.
Okay, thank you very much. So we talked a lot about still that we would like to create or foster more talent, more skill, that we really need maybe also from the beginning to have these more cross-cutting conversations, to bring, users, regulators, and also let's say EO experts together. I think Lynn mentioned that also and showcased that really nicely in her keynote on these cross-functional teams that then analysis output can also be used, for example, in courts. So maybe concluding and also expanding, for example, to what we have heard throughout this week. So I'm also looking at Max, for example, for technology, but also how we manage operations. I'd like to ask a little bit what are the historical bottlenecks that have persisted, so that we are now slowly maybe approaching. We've known that user uptake is a topic for a while, and also how do we manage this, and how do you see these things evolving in the future?
Thank you, Stephanie. Two points I heard over the decades now that are usually the issue from infrastructure perspective, the processing power and the data access. It's the same words today, but they mean something different than 20 years ago. Getting hands-on data, even 10 years ago, was quite different. Preparing data, then only looking at one city, and now global decadal data sets, that's quite different. It's not anymore about getting hands-on data, but getting hands-on trusted data and even application-ready data. So no preparation, no tech. That's something that changed. And with respect to processing, I feel, or processing resources and processing power, I got the feeling it's there and it's plenty and it does not matter. But the question is that true, and to what extent is that true? Because this is also an economic and ecological aspect which we do not address right now that much. I always pledge in the direction more brain power into algorithms to make them more efficient. That's the best kind of green IT, because where we can scale down our footprint in HPC systems by 1, 5, maybe 8 or 9%. We can scale it down by better algorithms, more brain power in writing algorithms by factors easily. So these are the two things that came to my mind.
Thank you very much. So to wrap up this conversation that I'm sure maybe we can continue also throughout the break today or at lunch after the conference, if you stay around, is I would like to ask what are your key takeaways of BiDS'25? And from the conversation we had, what are or should we be working on maybe until next BiDS and beyond in one sentence, if possible. So maybe Franz, if you'd like to start to react.
My key takeaway is that you're an amazing crowd. I'm very impressed by all the things I've seen here and the fast development of these technologies and these opportunities that is happening. Maybe one thing that could think about for the next BiDS or in the future is maybe to bring in the user perspective a bit better, to have also some people who are linked to the real end user and present their perspective as well.
I concur. The applications that we saw were amazing. One key takeaway of the many I have noted down is to take into account one of yesterday's, I believe, pitches that stressed the commercialization of all that. There is great potential in that. And one more, if I may, very quickly. Space data is part of digital technology broadly, and it has developed in a way that really takes digital technology over its shoulders. Without space data, we don't have digital technology. In digital technology regulation, we do not see space data anywhere. So maybe a topic for future discussion, combining everyone's view, would be how to connect those two sectors.
Very interesting. Your 2 points, that's exactly the direction I also want to go. Get closer to the end user, in the end, involve in the design process, more prototypes or more trials, more things you can look at. Does not work really, but shows you what the end user is getting for. I saw some of this this week, these days, and I think this is a way to really find out what really helps, because only if you see what you get, you understand what you could do with that.
Yeah, so now I can steal all of your points. So I agree with all of you, actually. And by the way, I'm in the digital hub of the bank doing space economy, so I'm definitely working on that correlation there. You said one sentence, right? Takeaway: invite more financial institutions. Because I know the other financial institutions, international financial institutions, also see the value of Earth observation and geospatial data. So I think it would be nice for the audience also to see how we need them, basically to scale up these projects together. So invite more. Thanks.
Yes, well, no surprise. I also agree with everything that you said, obviously. But the biggest takeaway, I think, from me is that, first of all, I think it's a great event. It's an event that basically gives you the possibility to talk to the policymakers, to talk to the financial institutions, to get, let's say, the know-how of things of how can we move forward. So from my perspective, I think it's just... I agree with the concept of inviting more people, so invite more people, but also maybe focusing on the, let's say, the unicorns that we have already, who are thinking of developing products, who have developed products, because when they, I think when they share their, let's say, stories, their, let's say, inspirational stories, innovations, that's something that really, let's say, an example is all the time much better than just theory, but also I think that it's really great that we can have these discussions with, let's say, the industry and the policymakers, just to, let's say, bridge any misconceptions and, let's say, clear the air with what can we do and what are the possibilities.
Okay, so thank you very much. I'm so sorry we are really out of time, but we are staying around for more discussion if wanted. But I would say if there is one message that we've heard to carry forward is really that innovation and also societal innovation and basically growth lies at the intersection of different disciplines here. So connecting people and reaching out also to users we haven't talked to banks is maybe the work that lies ahead also for all the technical audience that we have in BiDS here. So round of applause to all of our panelists. And we're looking forward with the next technical session that will take place here now. So thank you very much.